You're listening to Beyond Wellness Radio, bringing you the cutting edge in health, biohacking, and sports performance. Stay up to date and listen anywhere and anytime on your computer, tablet, or smartphone by subscribing on iTunes. Catch your host, Dr. Justin Marchegiani, as he answers your burning health questions as well as interviews from world-renowned guest experts. For more Beyond Wellness Radio, go to beyondwellnessradio.com.
Hey there, it's Dr. Justin Marchegiani. Welcome to Beyond Wellness Radio. Feel free and head over to beyondwellnessradio.com where you can access our full podcast transcriptions. While you're there, you can also sign up for our thyroid and female hormone video series. This series goes into the root cause of why your hormones are out of balance. While you're there, you can also schedule a functional medicine consult with Dr. Justin, myself, where we'll dig deeper into the root cause of your health challenges. Feel free and think of sharing this podcast with at least one person. This podcast grows by people sharing it. Sharing is caring. If you can think of one person that can benefit from this information, please feel free and share it. If you're enjoying the podcast, make sure you subscribe on iTunes. You can also click below the video or podcast where you'll see the iTunes review button and leave us a review. You can also sign up for the newsletter at beyondwellnessradio.com where you'll get updates before anyone else. Thank you so much and enjoy the show. Hey there, it's Dr. Justin Marchegiani. We have a great podcast interview coming your way. We have Eileen Laird. She is an autoimmune expert, and I'm really excited to bring her on because I see so many patients in my clinic that have autoimmune condition or autoimmune diseases, and her website is such a great reference. So I'd like to welcome Eileen to the show. Eileen, how are we doing?
I'm doing great, and thank you so much for having me, and thank you for your kind words.
Thanks, you got it. Well, before we start out, what did you have for breakfast?
Homemade chicken soup. It's my favorite breakfast. I make a huge batch of it. I shouldn't say me anymore. My husband actually loves it too, so he's taken over the making of the breakfast soup. I'm pretty lucky that way. But it serves us like 5 days a week during the work week.
Cool. Awesome. And I'm just curious, how did you get the name of your website, phoenixhelix.com?
Yeah, so for people who don't know, I have rheumatoid arthritis, and that hit my life like a wrecking ball back in 2012. And the pain was so intense and the disabling influence in my life was so overwhelming that I really felt like I was on fire and knocked down so hard I didn't know if I would ever get up again. And I was looking for images of hope and found the phoenix and really loved that idea of rising above those flames. So it remains a very powerful image for me, and definitely the paleo diet and lifestyle was the key for me rising above those flames. And then the helix represents DNA and our ability to affect our genes turning on and off. So we aren't just defined by the genes that, for example, in me add up to rheumatoid arthritis, that I can control to some extent how that manifests in my body and how much it does or does not influence my life.
Got it. So you kind of already give us a little feedback about your life. You were an RA patient, rheumatoid arthritis, and I imagine you stumbled upon the autoimmune diet because the conventional medical options out there are kind of bleak. Is that kind of what happened?
Exactly. I mean, it really did hit my life like a wrecking ball. I was what I thought was healthy. You know, I was hiking for fun on the weekends. The most recent trip I took, we had done 10-mile mountain hikes every day. I ate what I thought was healthy. You know, it was organic, but it was nothing like paleo. I had gluten and dairy every day. Just thought if it was organic, it was okay.
Right.
Yeah. And then, you know, it started with just a little bit of pain in my feet, very quickly spread to my hands and then body wide. And within 6 months, I was limping, crossing the living room. I couldn't lift a dish to wash the dishes. I couldn't work. I was exhausted. I felt like I was 90 years old all day, and that was my good baseline. And then in the evening, the flares would hit so hard I would have to immobilize whatever joint got hit. So if it was my wrist, it would go into a brace. If it was my shoulder, it would go into a sling. If it was my jaw, I couldn't open my mouth to eat. So it was very terrifying. And as you know, and your listeners know, the autoimmune conventional treatment, even though it's necessary sometimes, just because life is so desperate, it's not really a sustainable answer. So I was hoping to avoid that and hopped online, and thank goodness for the internet, because 10 years before that, I don't think I'd have known there were even alternatives. And that's when I did find out about the Paleo Autoimmune Protocol.
I know. It's like patients go down this autoimmune type of path, and like you being in the having rheumatoid arthritis, you go to a rheumatologist and they're recommending prednisone and corticosteroids, things that are shutting down the immune system, maybe even chemotherapeutic drugs like methotrexate. And it's really a scary path because at some point, a lot of these medications, the side effects can even be worse than the autoimmune conditions. And I just had a patient just listening to my podcast on autoimmune lifestyle last month call me up and say, hey, I'm pain-free for the first time in 20 years following an autoimmune diet. And it just, I feel really fortunate to get that information out there, but I scratch my head and say, why isn't this first-line therapy in every rheumatologist or conventional medical doctor's practice?
Exactly, because the statistics show if you survey rheumatoid arthritis patients, you get very different answers than if you survey the doctors. The doctors will say the drugs are so good that they're miracles. And if you survey the patients who are on the strongest drugs available, half of them still need steroids in addition to that. Almost all of them need some level of painkiller at the NSAID level. They're not living pain-free lives. So the fact that the diet can be so effective either by itself or in addition, it's just a shame that it's not as well known. But I think, I think that's changing. I think there's a revolution going on and more people are trying it for sure.
I think so too. And it's fascinating that a lot of these rheumatologists, as I talk to them in practice, they really don't have an understanding on diet and how it can affect autoimmunity. And it's just like they have a very reductionistic approach, anti-inflammatories, immune suppressive, pain relieving medications, and that's it. And the diet piece is out of the equation. And I've just seen so many hundreds of people in my practice get better. So I think you getting your word out there. I know you have your book on the autoimmune lifestyle, which anyone that has an autoimmune condition needs to get that book. That's the simple guide to the Paleo Autoimmune Protocol. And I use all of these tenets with my patients, and I'm in the trenches, and these things work. Like the simple action items that we talk about on the autoimmune plan, they work. Cutting out the grains, the refined sugar, stabilizing blood sugar. I know you talk about in your book getting nutrient-dense autoimmune paleo foods in. Can you talk more about what your favorite nutrient-dense autoimmune paleo foods are?
Yeah, and I'm so glad that you brought that up. And I know that you recommend that to your patients. But I think sometimes when people first find the AIP, they're very focused on the foods they remove
Mm-hmm.
and they don't focus on the foods they're eating. And if you're not getting well on the AIP, that's definitely one of the first things I'd recommend. Like if you're having chicken breasts and broccoli and then tons of AIP desserts, that's not really
Totally.
the best way to do the protocol. So, so bone broth is a really nice one for people to start with, I think, because it's not hard to make and it's inexpensive and it's such a good gut healing food. And if you just keep mixing up the variety of bones, you get a lot of different nutrition into that. And if you don't like the flavor, you can turn it into soup, and it's not a very intimidating one to start with. And then, yeah, we have to talk about organ meat, right? So,
Totally.
um, a lot of people just automatically feel like, no, don't tell me to eat that. But I never had it before I went AIP, and I really like it now. So my favorites are probably heart, and the chicken hearts are really easy to prepare. They're little. I
Mm.
marinate mine for like, I don't know, an hour in some olive oil, coconut aminos, a little powdered ginger. Trying to think if anything else goes in there. I think that might actually be it. And then just fry them up in a pan for like 5 minutes and you've got yourself a nutrient dense meal, and they're delicious. And the beef heart I think tastes a lot like steak, but you do have to face what a heart looks like. And I think that was interesting for me the first time, because I think when we eat meat, if it's ground beef, we don't really think about where it comes from every time we eat it. And if you're preparing a heart, you know where that's coming from. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it just increases your gratitude for what you're eating, actually.
Yeah, it takes life to sustain life, and plant, or I should say animal matter, animal protein, animal organs, they really are a bioaccumulator of nutrition.
hmm
And what's your take on people that try an AIP but just do it from a vegetarian perspective? Is that possible? What's been your observation?
I don't, Well, I will say absolutely not possible just because you're not going to get enough nutrition if you are really talking vegetarian.
Right.
Like a lot of my friends call themselves vegetarian and they eat seafood, and that's totally different thing. So, but if you're a vegetarian and you're not eating any kind of animal products or any kind of seafood, you're getting all your protein from eggs, grains, and legumes and soy. And all of those are removed on the Paleo Autoimmune Protocol. So you're definitely going to be protein deficient. But you can do it as a pescatarian, absolutely.
Yes.
Seafood is wonderful. I'm sure you've talked about it a lot, but omega-3 rich fatty acids. Some of the seafood also has vitamin D, and then the shellfish is sometimes as nutrient dense as organ meats. Like I hear that oysters are right up there with liver in terms of their nutrient profile. So if you're eating seafood, you can do it, but you do need to eat some type of, I don't know what seafood or animal, I think, to do it successfully.
Yeah, it's difficult. I work with some vegan, vegetarian patients where we'll add in some at least free form amino acids. I'll
Mm-hmm.
talk them into getting some liver in capsules at least because they can wrap their head around, oh, well, it's in a pill. It's like medicine, right? So
Okay.
that will help. And then pea protein, clean pea protein. It's not the most ideal, I guess. I want to get your take on that in a second. Clean pea protein can be a good, happy medium. And then even beef protein as well can be a good source. What are your take on some of those supportive proteins for people that may have a harder time with the animal proteins?
I can see where you're going with it because I imagine you're doing that for people who will not consider the alternatives. And
Exactly.
so that gives them a gateway in. And so it's like I would say, I think the pea protein wouldn't be actually like strict AIP, but it's as close to AIP as you can get. I
Right.
always prefer whole foods to supplements, and I'm sure you do too. So that's why I would encourage people to baby step their way into that idea. But it's a process each person has to go through on their own, and there's a lot of reasons people come to vegetarianism. What's interesting in the AIP community is some of the largest, like most famous names used to be vegetarians. So Terry Walls was a vegetarian for, I believe it was 20 years
Wow.
before she started
Hmm.
eating meat again. And Mickey Trescott over on Autoimmune Paleo was vegan. So it's a lot of people have been through that before you, is what I would say to any listener. You're not alone on that. And I have an article on my blog called Can You Do the AIP as a Vegetarian, where I talk about the steps you can take to kind of baby step your way into it. And a lot of that advice I got from Terry. She just said, sometimes it's the smell and texture you have to get used to. So you start off with the broth and then you do pureed, vegetable soups with just a little bit of meat and go ahead and puree it up. So it just kind of seems like a thick, savory soup. And then from there, add a little bit of chunks if you can and kind of move your way forward. And she said, wait to grill a steak until, further down the road.
Yeah, that makes sense. And do you find a lot of people are reluctant to add some of the meat back in if they are coming from a vegan, vegetarian standpoint? Do you feel like, I feel personally it's more of like an emotional type of thing. They're wrapping their head around the fact that, oh, it's a cute animal, this and that, but they're not looking at it from the perspective of scientifically, there's nutrients, there are things that our cells and body needs in there. What do you feel most of the reasons are for people not adding meat into their diet typically?
Yeah, I think if they're coming at it from an ethical perspective, it's harder. The
Mhm.
health perspective is just a matter of education,
Yeah,
right? I
it's
think that mainstream media still promotes vegetarianism as healthier. And so it's like a shock when you think that you realize that paleo is healthier. But when it comes to ethical, I think one thing that helps is there's a book out, I believe, called The Vegetarian Myth, and it talks
yes.
about how many animals are killed in the farming of just plant agriculture, which would really be eye-opening for a lot of people to read. And the truth of the matter is, like you had just said, I think you said it takes life to make life, right? So
Yes.
there really is no way to be alive on this planet as a human being without some sacrifice happening on your behalf. And the more gratitude you can put forth for that sacrifice and the better choices you can make to make that sacrifice worthwhile. Like, as you know, a lot of vegetarians are junk food vegetarians.
Yes.
I mean, they eat the prepared and fast foods and frozen foods, and some of them don't even cook, and some don't even eat like many vegetables, which is kind of crazy.
Exactly. I feel like a lot of people, they are so willing to throw meat in just one basket and lump all meat as bad, which we
Hmm.
know that there's different, that's like saying the grass-fed steak from the farmer down the street's in the same category as the McDonald's burger on the dollar menu. No one would say that, but at the same time, we wouldn't say all vegetables are the same, which maybe it's a soybean grown in pesticides and GMO versus some kale grown in your backyard, right? We wouldn't say that about the vegetables, but we also have to have that same type of criteria for the meat as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the paleo community is great about that in terms of being mindful about
Quality.
the quality, the life of the animal lived beforehand, and and so you support the local farmers. I buy from my local farmers all the time, and those animals lived a beautiful life before their lives were given to become food for other people. And I wouldn't be comfortable eating anymore now that I'm educated, the CAFO beef and the those chickens that are so crowded together and I mean you see some awful things on those food documentaries. And I know that not everyone has access to perfect food, so we can get into some food perfectionism things here, but I
Right.
think just being mindful about our choices and making the best choices we can is a good idea, and it's good for our health. Like you said, it's very different, right?
Yeah, I love
Hmm.
that. Now, what percent of people do you find, by the way, are you seeing patients?
No,
Okay.
I'm just kind of a person in the trenches with everyone, sharing what I'm learning along the way.
But a lot of people come to you with questions about the autoimmune diet and transitioning, correct?
Yes, I would say I'm an expert on the protocol, and anytime anyone wants medical advice, I refer them to people like you.
Okay, got it. So I see a lot of patients that are paleo and they're just like, yeah, but do I really have to go AIP? I have some of these autoimmune symptoms. Is it really worth it? Now, I've seen a lot of patients where just cutting out nightshades or nuts has been a game changer. What percent of people do you see that are paleo and that just go from paleo, a good paleo, not a junk food paleo, to an
Hmm.
AIP level? What percent do you see have a really big improvement? And what percent of people are just, okay with it? Nothing much.
Yeah, I don't know that if I have the statistics, but I think it's absolutely fine to try paleo first and just see what it does for you. Because I've known people who've gone into remission on paleo without needing to do any AIP.
Okay.
And they even primal, which kind of blows me away because I can't have nightshades or dairy, so I'm jealous of those people, but I'm happy for them. So I do believe our diet should be as expansive as it can be while still being healthy for us. And I'll say that I stair stepped my way in also. I started with it was a nutrient dense paleo template when I first approached a healing diet. And I improved as much as I could at that level. And then when I plateaued, I was feeling a lot better. I wasn't in crisis anymore, but I wasn't healthy. And I still had pain every day. It was just manageable. And so that's why I went AIP, was to see if I could take it to the next level, and it made a big difference for me. So, yeah, if people want to see where paleo takes them first, that makes sense. And then if you're not getting the results you hope for, like for me, I went from, let's see, regular paleo took me from daily excruciating painful flares down to moderate flares a few times a month. And I no longer limped going across my living room, but I couldn't walk more than a mile before my feet would start to hurt. So that was where I plateaued. Way better, right?
Way
But
better.
not as good as it could be. Now, if it had put me into remission, I never would have done AIP.
I know it's one of those things people really don't get behind it unless they see the results. And for myself, when I have patients come in, they always start the first 3 or 4 weeks on AIP, and then we start following the progression of adding certain foods back in. And I have some patients that are already paleo for a few months, and we cut out the nightshades for the first time, and it's
Hmm.
like, whoa, their joint pain is gone. And I know you being an RA patient, rheumatoid
Hmm.
arthritis, what kind of improvement did you see cutting out the nightshades, the tomatoes, potatoes, eggplants, and peppers?
It's huge for me. So, what I will say too, when I did the regular paleo template, because I have RA and that RA nightshade connection is even kind of known outside of the paleo community, I removed all of the vegetables, but I kept eating the spices because I thought they were such a small amount it wouldn't matter. And so that was probably why I did improve on paleo. I wonder if I had kept eating potatoes and tomatoes and peppers, I don't know that I'd have improved at all. Um, but that might have been why I plateaued. So when I gave up the chili powder and the paprika and the curry blend that had the peppers in it, then my flares stopped altogether. So for me, it's a huge trigger.
Got it. And I wanted to shift gears into the mechanism of autoimmunity. There's been a lot of people talking about leaky gut, which is nothing more than the tight junctions in our digestive system kind of unzipping, so to speak, and those undigested food particles kind of getting into the bloodstream and creating this immune response. And it's kind of ironic, if you will, that a lot of the pain relieving medications that are out there, especially in the rheumatology world, they will actually increase leaky gut and increase digestive issues. So can you touch upon leaky gut and just kind of your thought process around how it's increasing autoimmune conditions?
Well, yeah. So I think that modern life creates a leaky gut, right? Just
Mm-hmm.
because of all of
Stress.
this, stress, and then all of the, fake ingredients in our foods that I'm sure have that influence. And so we were all kind of set up to be vulnerable to begin with. The AIP is a great diet for trying to heal and seal those junctions, which is wonderful. The tricky part with autoimmune disease is my understanding in the research is that once you have it, it will attack your gut as well as whatever part of your body is being attacked. So for me, it's my joints and my gut. For someone with Hashimoto's, it's the thyroid and the gut. So it's trickier for us to heal it as in a past tense. But I think everything we do to improve our autoimmune condition also improves leaky gut and going to the root cause instead of symptom management. That said, pain is a really serious issue, and pain causes leaky gut. So I definitely believe in relieving your pain at the same time. I don't think avoiding all painkillers, if nothing works that's an alternative, you just got to kind of find that balance if you can. And I know that's kind of tricky and gray area, and it's not as black and white as a lot of people might like to hear. But I do find the longer I'm in this community, the more varied results are on the AIP. So, like, everyone seems to improve actually pretty dramatically, but not everyone goes into remission. And so, if you're not in remission, what's left, I think functional medicine, like working with you,
Mm-hmm.
to keep on trying to get as closer and closer and closer as you can get to remission. But in the meantime, you might need to take some of those medications just to make it through your day.
Right. And then what's your take on people coming from an AIP or going into an AIP perspective? They're eating more proteins and fats. And now for some people that have digestive issues, that may intensify because of low stomach acid and low enzyme levels. What's your experience with utilizing more enzymes and more HCl for people that have a compromised gut going into an autoimmune diet?
Yeah, so I think that's definitely something to keep in mind. And I think my understanding, like with HCl, is you really want someone to guide you through that process, right? Isn't it
Mm-hmm.
kind of tricky to do on your own?
Yeah, you don't want to overdo it because you don't want to cause more gut lining damage, but that's why having HCl and enzymes separate for me is important with these patients because we can up the enzymes, which are less abrasive, and we can be really ginger with the HCl and be a little more gentle with it.
Yeah. And what I often tell people to do when they're first starting out is to go ahead and use some like food-based, um, what would you call them, that increase your stomach acid naturally, like a little apple cider vinegar and water with your meal, or some kombucha with your meal, or you can chew on a piece of ginger and it kind of gets the digestive enzymes flowing, and see if that's enough for you. Because for some people whose digestion isn't as compromised, just the food-based solutions will be enough. But I think you're right. I think for someone who, well, first of all, if they've been vegetarian for a long time, that's something that they may not, they're very likely going to need some supplements to get through the transition, just because they haven't had to break down that type of food for a long time. Same for someone who is maybe on like almost a non-fat diet for a long time, like you said. So just to help the body adjust to that transition.
Exactly. And I see you're a big fan of ginger tea as well.
Yeah, yeah, it's such a, well, it tastes good and it's lovely and it's anti-inflammatory and promotes digestion. And if you can't have your coffee anymore, that's a nice substitute for it because coffee is eliminated on the AIP, at least temporarily.
That's good. And then where does fermented foods fit into the AIP?
I think it's important to try them. It's a tricky area because
Mm-hmm.
some people do have difficulty with them, but I think they're such a powerful healing food if you do well with them. I do very well with them and I love them. So I make my own
Great.
sauerkraut and I make my own kombucha. I do recommend you make your own actually if you eat them because otherwise they're crazy expensive. Um, but I'm sure you run into this that some people who again maybe are dealing with some gut
Yeah.
infections are going to
Histamine
have trouble.
issues, right?
Yeah, but that's, I guess in some ways, that's kind of diagnostic. So if you start the AIP and you incorporate fermented foods and you're not tolerating them well, that would be a good time to call Dr. Justin and have some testing done. Because if you don't have gut infections, usually you tolerate those well. Because I think even histamine sensitivity they're finding is often rooted in either gut infections or hormone imbalances. So,
Yes.
mhm,
Yes. Totally agree.
mhm.
So if you're taking someone that's been on AIP, they've been there for a few weeks, and this is where I think your guide is so great. How do you transition them off? Just kind of like, what are the first, 5 steps or so? You've been AIP, you want to start reintroducing foods. What's the best order of operations in your opinion?
Sure. Well, the first thing I would say is to decide when you're ready. So you need to have enough improvement in your autoimmune symptoms that you have a good baseline for reintroduction. And so some people do get that faster than others. And so 3 to 4 weeks is fine. We usually say 30 days is the minimum. But some people, it takes a few months before they get that improvement. Because if you haven't improved at all, there's no way to know when you retest a food whether you're having a reaction because you're still having too many autoimmune reactions. So I tell people that. And the other thing I tell people to consider, though, also is the psychological component is some people do the AIP and they're really good at restriction and it just doesn't bother them. And luckily, there are like literally thousands of recipes available now. So you really can eat delicious, varied food on the AIP. It was more boring when I did it a few years ago. But other people, like it's stressful. We are attached to our food and giving up our favorite foods, we get kind of cranky about it and angry about it. And if that's getting worse, that might be setting you back. And so that's a good time to start reintroductions. But in terms of what to start with, you can go 2 ways. Sarah Ballantyne has like a 4-stage chart in her book, and it starts with things like, oh, the seed-based spices like cumin and coriander, and the fruit-based spices like black pepper. Most people get those back, so that's an easy kind of reintroduction that automatically adds some more flavor to your food. Egg yolks are often recommended as one of the first ones because they're so nutrient dense, and most people who are intolerant to eggs, it's the white. Not everyone, but most people. Um, some of the nut-based oils and like sesame seed oil or walnut oil are good ones to start with, and then move your way up from there.
Great. And then if you're going out to a restaurant, I'm going out to eat tonight and I'm going to try to eat. I try to be AIP 60 to 70% of the time, and then
Hmm.
paleo in general 95 to 99% of the time. And if I cheat, I still never get gluten in my diet. So when I go out to eat tonight, I'm going to get a steak, I'm going to get vegetables. I always tell the maitre d' or the cook or the waiter, I have celiac disease and I cannot do any grain. So any flour substitutes will not work. And I'm very crystal clear that I don't use the word sensitivity. I have this disease and I cannot do it. So I'm just curious, what's your take on it? Maybe it's not quite as drastic as mine. How do you go and navigate a restaurant and communicate with the people that are serving you about your food intolerances?
It's similar. I use the food allergy word because they take that seriously.
Hmm.
They don't take
Yep.
food intolerance
No, they
seriously
don't.
at all. And the other thing I do, which seems to really help me, is when the waiter or waitress comes to the table, I smile and I say, I'm just going to let you know that I'm a high maintenance customer, but I'm a really good tipper and I will make it worth your while. And they usually laugh, but then they take good care of me and I make sure that I tip them well. And you tell them that in advance so they're not annoyed by all the extra extra questions you're asking. Because what I'll usually do, like you, I'll eat something often very similar, the steak and vegetables. Usually I'll look through the menu, see what options are available to me. I'll pick two that I think are the most likely to be fine. And then the foods that I know that can kind of get hidden in the meal without my realizing it is if it's going to be cooked in butter and if there's any nightshade in the spice mix. So I'll have them go back and just ask the chef if I can have that food prepared without those things and which one they'd recommend for me. And then they do. And that seems to work fine.
Yeah, I also, if I'm doing vegetables, I can do butter, but like, let's say you can't, I would
Hmm.
just tell them, just steam vegetables and bring a side of olive oil, and I'll put the olive oil on. So then you're the one adding the fat on there. So the steaming can be helpful. And then obviously salads. And if you can get an olive oil and maybe an apple cider vinegar and some lemon juice, that could be a good substitute too.
Yeah, I've even brought in some of my own spice blends because sometimes you can get kind of because I can't have the nightshade spices and and gluten, and often between those two things, most of their mixes in the back like you can't have, or their dressings. So I'll bring in an AIP friendly little spice blend in my purse and shake that on my vegetables or my salad or even my steak if it needs a little boost.
Yeah, that's good. And when I do sushi, I'll also bring out my coconut aminos
Yeah.
and MCT, and I'll do that instead of, soy or even the tamari gluten-free soy, which is better. But for some people, you're going to do better with something that's totally AIP approved, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Any other tips? Any other cool tips that you have for going out and being successful on it?
Being successful on the AIP in general, do you mean?
Yeah. Just while you're not eating at home.
Yeah. I mean, I would say be vigilant, and
Mhm.
it's not the way it. What can I say? I mean, to be 100% honest, I don't have the relaxing experience in a restaurant I used to have, right?
Right.
Before I contracted RA. So it's a different experience for me now, but I take it seriously just because I know for me personally, the results can be pretty severe. So if I get exposed to one of my bad foods, I'll be in pain, and sometimes it takes me a few weeks before I feel back to normal. So it's that kind of depends too. I think once you've been doing AIP a while, and what I mean by that is it becomes personalized AIP, you've reintroduced some foods, you know which ones are your worst triggers, you know where you can, like you said, cheat a little bit, and you know where you can't. That's the goal we all want to get to, is know our bodies well enough to know what we need to do to take excellent care of ourselves and where we can be flexible. And so then when you go out, you can find that line. I like how you talked about it. You know what foods you absolutely can have, and then you know which ones that it's okay. I mean, it may not be optimal for you, but it's not going to set you back.
Absolutely. And I think it's important that everyone finds out what their kryptonite is. And
Yeah.
like yourself, you know what your kryptonite is, and you can kind of weigh out the risk reward, benefit. Is it worth having this food that will set me back 2 weeks? Probably not. But if someone's already been AIP for a month and they've added certain foods back in, and maybe they have some butter and it's not a problem, or if they have some potatoes, maybe they just have a little gassy for the night, well, then you can do your own risk reward analysis on that. But some people, like yourself, Eileen, you're going to have that severe reaction. So I think it's good that everyone figures out what their kryptonite is. And I think it's great that everyone here, and you're creating this self-awareness so people can figure out what is their kryptonite.
Yeah, and just to be optimistic too for the people who maybe are just thinking about AIP. And so I've only talked about the foods I couldn't get back, but I mean, I got eggs back completely, so that's been really nice. I can eat them. I can eat any kind of egg. I mean, at home I eat
That's great.
pastured, organic, fabulous eggs, but if I'm traveling, I can eat conventional eggs. It's not ideal, but they don't hurt me, and that's nice to know. I can have chocolate, which is just a nice joy for my life.
Oh, that's
So
great. That's great.
yeah, I do well with those. And then nuts and seeds I can have in moderation. So that means, like for me, if I'm at a restaurant, I can choose something that has nuts in a salad, and seriously not worry about it. It's only a problem for me if I eat them every day. So yeah, getting to know yourself, it's really kind of cool to know yourself that well.
That is great. And what's your take on butter or ghee? Are you able to personally add ghee or butter back in?
No. And it's interesting. I ended up writing an article about that because it's not the way it's advertised to be, and it just made no sense to me. I was like, why, if there's no really protein levels remaining in the ghee, like what is the problem? Why is it in my head? Is it just me? And so I interviewed tons of people in the AIP community, and what was interesting is it seems that people who can tolerate ghee can usually also tolerate butter, cream, and sometimes cheese. And people who cannot tolerate butter cannot tolerate ghee. So I think what it is the autoimmune body is more sensitive than other bodies. That's all. Because I do know people who are friends of mine who do not have autoimmune disease, who do poorly with other kinds of dairy, but they do fine with ghee, but they don't have an autoimmune trigger reaction. So I wish I could eat ghee because it's nutrient dense and delicious, frankly. But no, for me, it's a no-go.
Have you ever tried the Mount Capra's goat ghee?
I have not tried that, but I have tried other goat dairy. So I tried raw organic goat's milk homemade kefir when I
Yeah.
was reintroducing dairy just to try and get the best quality of everything. And I reacted to that also.
How
So it
about
seems like dairy is dairy for me.
how about MCT? Can you do that?
Yeah, well, that's coconut, right?
Yeah, that's coconut. And then can you do coffee as well?
I don't like coffee, but I bet I could do it just fine just because I seem to be fine with chocolate and nuts and seeds in some quantity. But I actually have never liked the taste of coffee, so I can't say.
Got it. Got it. And then based on your experience, because you're a living example of having an autoimmune condition and basically reversing it and keeping it under wraps and under control. What have been the best supplements for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, curcumin
Mm-hmm.
is really helpful for me. What I did find is that it's what's interesting with supplements, and you've probably found this too, that during my experiments, like in the beginning, I thought, well, if it worked for me at a little level, then the more I took, the more it should work, and that didn't seem to happen. Like a supplement either worked or it didn't once I found the right dosage, but it wasn't like taking 3 or 4 times as much made a difference. But I take curcumin every day. I take it actually before I get out of bed. Before I wake up in the morning, I'm usually kind of slowly becoming more alert, and it seems to work better on an empty stomach for me. I take I think it's called TOA, cat's claw. It's a
Yep.
special,
Yep.
it's an immunoregulatory herb, and that really helps me. And so those are my two favorites. I also take some krill oil for the omega-3s.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what else do I take? I do take a little of boswellia,
Yeah,
but
Boswellia. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
that's
Frankincense.
anti-inflammatory.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a subtler reaction. It's not as strong as their curcumin, but it does help me a little bit. And how I feel is anything that helps me, that's healthy for me,
Yeah.
I will keep taking. So I think that's my whole list.
How do you respond to collagen or glucosamine sulfate or chondroitin sulfate for the joint stuff?
Yeah, the glucosamine chondroitin didn't help me, so I
Mm-hmm.
don't take that at all. Collagen I do get in my bone broth, and I have tried
Sure.
taking it. I've bought is it the Great Lakes green can? That's collagen,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I tried adding that like to my tea every day. I have green tea every day, and just to see if that would make a difference. And I couldn't really tell a difference. So I thought, well, maybe it's just that I'm getting enough anyway.
Got it. And then how do you square adding in curcumin? Because I know turmeric off the bat's a spice and the active ingredients curcumin. And for autoimmune patients, some people say, well, we got to cut that out off the bat. How did you square that, adding it in? Did you put it in right away? Did you go AIP first and then add it in supplementally second?
Well, turmeric is on the list of AI approved spices,
Okay.
so you can have that. But here's the trick. My understanding, and you probably know this way better than me, is it's not very bioavailable.
Right. 15%.
So, yeah, so you need something to boost the bioavailability.
Yes.
Black pepper is something that usually
Mm-hmm.
does boost it, but that's eliminated on the AIP. And I also think when you go to supplements, almost everyone that's bioavailable has a non-AIP food in there. Um, and so, frankly, for me, my supplement, I take what is it? It's a life extension super biocurcumin. It's one of those BCM 95
Yeah, I think
brands.
I think it's the one by Mariva. I think that's the one. Is it the liposomal curcumin?
No, but I've heard of
Okay.
that one, and that one has the soy in it you're not supposed to have. The one
Yeah.
I take has rice in it that's you're not supposed to have. Another
Got
one
it.
will have black pepper in it that you're not supposed to have. But it was helping me so much I just couldn't give it up. And I trusted my body to tell me that. Like if I took that supplement and it made me feel better instead of worse, it's logical to me that that's a silly thing to remove. I
Right.
realize that's not AIP standard, but that's just how I do it. I'm all about the self experiment. N equals one.
Yeah, and there's a curcumin that just came out that's going to be in a liposome of MCT oil versus the
Ooh.
soy phosphatidylcholine. So that's a new one that could be beneficial for you.
If you ever remember that when it comes out, send me that link because people are always asking me for an AIP friendly one, and I feel badly that there's not any really available unless you just get one that's just curcumin, and then as you know, it
Absorption.
doesn't absorb well.
Got it. I'll put that in the show notes for you.
Yeah.
And then also with my patients, I've always allowed turmeric to be added in. I've seen some places where they say don't, but some people are really, really hardcore. Like the major spices I don't allow are any peppers, paprika, seed-based spices, fenugreek
hmm
seed, celery seed. Are there any other key spices that people tend to miss and add in that you want to mention?
I really think the nightshade ones are the biggest triggers,
Right.
and then the seed based and the fruit based, I think, are more just to be on the cautious side. Some
Hmm.
people I think the ones who have more trouble with those, they're kind of slightly hot spices, and they maybe have more digestive, either leaky gut or if they have, say, ulcerative colitis or something like that, maybe their digestive tract is more sensitive.
Hmm.
But I do find most people don't have as much trouble with those. It's still recommended you eliminate them, but I really think the nightshade ones are the biggest issue. And what I will say for that, and I think you named it off, is people forget which ones are nightshades, and paprika is in everything. If you were trying to buy a
Yes.
packaged meat, like hot dogs or sausages or deli meats, almost every single one is going to have paprika in it. So when you've given up paprika, you have to shop very carefully for anything like that
Totally.
until you can find out if you can reintroduce it. And some people can reintroduce that one better than the rest because it's a milder nightshade. I can't, but some people can.
Got it. And in your book, I know you talked about it. We touched upon it earlier, infections. What was your personal experience with infections being a part of your autoimmune condition? Did you see a connection there, or for you, was it just more food-based?
Um, Let me see. Well, when I started with a GAPS Paleo hybrid, which is a
Hmm.
low starch diet designed to cut back on pathogens. And then by the time I got tested, I didn't test positive for anything.
Hmm.
So I think I had kind of starved it out. So I don't know what it would have been like if I had tested at the outset. One way I'm lucky is I haven't had a lot of obstacles to healing. So, like what I'll say to people who are doing the AIP and it's been a few months and they're not getting any better, there's likely an infection getting in the way, right? Whether that
Yeah.
be H. pylori or a parasite or something else. For me, the challenges more recently have been hormone issues. And like we talked about on my
Yes.
podcast, but I'm 47 now. So that
You're in
things
that.
really start to change.
You're in
And
that.
so I've
Yeah.
been doing all I can to balance that out, but I might be giving you a call myself if I can't keep doing that. With autoimmune disease, you just got to keep your eye on the ball and adjust as life changes.
Yeah, and you're in that perimenopausal kind of time
Yeah.
frame, 47 to 51 ish. So
Yeah,
as
and
you
things just go a little crazy. It's
Yeah,
weird.
as you start to rely more on the adrenals for that hormone output, things can definitely fluctuate if that autoimmunity has been stressing your adrenals, which again, inflammation, your adrenals are going to help put out the fire. So it makes sense. And I know on your supplement list, you mentioned you did really well on the cemento or the tau-free cat's claw. And
Yeah.
I always think when I hear that, I'm always thinking infections because I use that a lot in my clinic for lower immune function, infections, even Lyme conditions do great with that. Do you have any other co-infection experience you want to mention?
I haven't tested positively for anything, and I don't seem to have any symptoms that indicate that. Like my understanding, like especially with like the Epstein bars and all of that,
Yeah.
is once they've been reactivated, you usually have like fatigue, lymph node issues,
It can, yeah.
some things like that, more brain fog, etc. And I haven't had any of that. So it could just be that I started that supplement very quickly once I started the paleo diet. And so maybe it's just kept things under control. I don't know if there's anything still hidden under there. Might be worth, doing a battery of tests just to see if there's a low grade thing that I'm not kicking completely.
Yeah, one thing I see with RA is mycoplasma infections. Have you ever gotten that looked at?
No.
Yeah, that's one that I see. I know Dr. Brownstein's talked about it, a couple other physicians. There's a lot of research on it, and I see mycoplasma can be present in some of those patients, but something
Cool.
to look at. And I know cat's claw is helpful with it, so that's why I'm kind of just connecting the dots and seeing maybe if you're hitting some potential infections just accidentally with the cat's claw.
Yeah, it's fascinating to hear you say because I remember when I interviewed you, you said when you do your patient history with people, what has worked and what hasn't is diagnostic. It's
Yeah.
fascinating to see how that works
Oh,
once
yeah.
you have the knowledge like you do.
Yeah. That totally makes sense. And now looking at your book, there's so many great things that, everyone that has an autoimmune condition should be aware of. Is there any other key topics or key points on your book that you wanted to highlight that everyone should be aware of?
The one thing I'd rather do is just kind of highlight the book overall so
Yeah.
that I think until now you can be overwhelmed when you do research into the AIP because there's so much information on the internet. Some of it's conflicting. The Paleo Approach is an awesome resource. It's on my shelf, but it's almost 500 pages long and it's a textbook. And so that overwhelms a lot of people, especially if they're not very science oriented or if they're experiencing brain fog. So, what I wanted to do was write a book that you could read in a few hours that was written like a conversation with friends, where by the end of that few hours, you understand what the protocol is. And when you're ready to do it, you can just get started. So, that was the intention behind the book. And that's the feedback I'm getting from people is that that's how it's working for them. And the other thing that's cool about it is people are buying it for friends with autoimmune disease who they want to consider the AIP, and it's a non-intimidating introduction to the protocol. And then the other thing that's happening is people are giving it to their family members so that hopefully their family will be more supportive and understand what they're trying to do. Because it can sound crazy sometimes when you tell your parents or your partner or your kids or whoever, your best friend, what you're doing. It can sound extreme if they don't understand why you're doing it. And so the book kind of explains it for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to have the link for the book. Guys, the book's $8, $9 on Amazon. Great buy. And I'm going through it right now, and it's a great review and a great reminder even at the physician level. So anyone out there, check it out. We're going to put the link on the show notes and the transcription. So anyone going to read it will have that accessible. Is there any other kind of key important things you want to leave our listeners here, Eileen?
What I will just say is you're stronger than you think you are. Like if you haven't done this yet and you think it's too hard for you, I really think autoimmune disease is one of the toughest experiences in life. And if you are living through that and you're making it through every day, even if it's a tough day, you are an incredibly strong human being and you deserve better. You deserve to feel better. And so that's what I would say to you, is that it's worth doing this thing that seems hard to make your life a lot easier in the long run.
That's great. And if people want to find out more about you, where's the best place?
PhoenixHelix.com. So that's PhoenixHelix.com. And I host an AIP recipe roundtable every week on my blog. So that's a great way where you can usually get about 15 new recipes a week to keep yourself from being bored in the kitchen. And if you're not familiar with an AIP, to kind of see how delicious this food can be. So that's wonderful. And then I also, as we've talked about it a bit because I interviewed Dr. Justin on it, but I have a Phoenix Helix podcast. You can check me out in iTunes, and it's 100% focused on autoimmune healing.
And I love that name. There's so much hidden symbolism in it.
Thank you.
It's great. And then last question. If you were stuck on a desert island and you only could bring one supplement with you, what would it be?
Oh my, you'd make me choose between the curcumin and the cat's claw.
Okay.
That would be really hard.
Okay. Well, if you want, we could just say it's a tie for first place between both of those.
Yes, those are the two.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Eileen. You've really just put just so much information out there. We'll have to listen to it twice and look forward to having you back sometime soon.
Okay, thank you. It's been really fun talking with you. I appreciate you having me on.
Same here. Thanks. Have a great day.
You too.
Got a question for Dr. J? Go to beyondwellnessradio.com and click the questions button. Then tune in to hear the answer. Also, if you like the show, click below to review us on iTunes. For more Beyond Wellness Radio, go to beyondwellnessradio.com.